I adored him, and I adore this work. I mean, it is a part of me. It runs through my veins, and as long as it's running through my veins, you're going to hear me sing these songs. I was born into a family of immigrants. My father from Mexico, my mother from Argentina. And my father's a singer. He was a mariachi singer. And we had a little record store in Santa Monica, Venice, where the whole family worked. We all worked there, and I grew up there. So I was surrounded by music my whole life, and Spanish language music. So the poetry of the music and the lyric and everything was ingrained in my brain. I love Germany, again, because I told you, I studied Lieder in high school when I was a teenager, and my mother spoke German. My mother, I forget exactly when, but her family left, they're Austrian-Hungarians, and they left during one of the wars, I don't remember, to go to Argentina, and they had opportunities there, so they could get farmland and farm, so that's what they did. So when I was little, and because she was in Argentina, she spoke Spanish and she spoke German, and she met my father in Los Angeles learning how to speak English at an English class. And one day, she and I would go help her do laundry at 5 in the morning before school. And so we were at the laundry, and then she said, let's go get a pastry at the German deli. So we went to the German deli, and she starts to speak German to the woman behind the counter. I was shocked. I'd never heard German before. I was just this little kid. And then I said, what are you doing, and who are you? And she said, oh, my family, our first language was German. So yeah, it's part of me. You know, when I would start to listen to Leonard Cohen, to me it wasn't like all other American music or music that I listened to in my childhood in English. In fact, I felt a lot of the English pop music, some was good, but a lot of it was very shallow. And when I got asked to audition for Leonard, I went and I found as many cassettes, it's a long time ago, to listen to. And I remember listening to his lyrics and saying, wow, this reminds me of the Spanish music that I listened to, the Spanish language music, which has kind of a deep reality to it. And maybe it's the language, maybe it's the poetry, I'm not sure. But for me, it's a deep feeling that hits harder than any other English lyric that I've heard. So Leonard did that to me with the English language. And I just was blown away. I just said, you know, I've got to meet this man. Even if I don't get the job, I just have to meet him. I went to the audition thinking, you know, of course, before the audition, I thought the most important decision that I'm going to make is what am I going to wear? Because the first impression is very important, right? So I get dressed, I show up to the audition, and the musical director says, Perla, Leonard's coming down the hall. Let's introduce you first before you go in for the audition. And I said, great, that would be lovely. And I see this figure walking toward me, and he gets closer, and we both start to laugh. Because of course, Leonard Cohen is dressed in black from head to toe, and I am dressed in white from head to toe. And he gives me his hand and he said, darling, this is a match made in heaven. Of course, Leonard opened the world for me. From this young kid in a Mexican-American family living in a very, small, poor situation. Never, that's not an issue for me, but still kind of a simple life. I'd never traveled, nothing. And then Leonard takes me on tour and shows me the world, but opens up the world in other ways too, by his poetry. And here I am, 30 years plus later, still devoted to Leonard and his music. The other singer that I worked with, Julie Christensen, and we had worked together before. And
with whom?
together in jazz groups and other groups, videos, many other things before. And she and I truly had a special connection. We never, ever discussed anything musically. We just knew, I'll do this part, you'll do that part, and then we'll switch. We'll cross each other, and then you'll take the high part, and I'll take the low part. We never talked about it, we just did it. And so it was magic. I get goosebumps thinking about it. It was magical, magical. And Leonard recognized that right away. Everyone recognized that right away. And we cared deeply. We wanted it to be just right. We wanted Leonard to have what he wanted, and we wanted him to be happy. But the song that they chose for me to audition, the hardest song in the whole show, is First We Take Manhattan. Because in the middle, there's a part where there's a choir singing, and we have to pretend to the two of us to be a choir. And I have to hit this high note that's operatic. And I'd never heard the song before. So somebody just teaches it to us, and we do it. And I honestly think that was the moment when Leonard just said, okay. And even in his last concert tour, I didn't hear anybody hit that high note. So, because and I can only speak for myself, so desperately wanted to please him, because I did see him as this deity. I really wanted to please him. I would keep trying things. If something didn't work and he was doubtful, I would give him something else. Okay, what about this? What about this? What about this idea? What about this idea? So we would keep trying, and there were times when it just didn't happen at the end of the day, and I would just be in tears. But Leonard was searching for something, and that's, I think, why he picked people that he knew really cared. Hallelujah was always very easy. Also, I think it's because it was not Leonard's favorite song. He always just said, it's my most famous song, but it's not the song he's proudest of, because he felt like it was almost too easy. I think Famous Blue Raincoat was very difficult. Even Suzanne was a difficult one. And also, he just wanted the whole time for there to be, it's like theater. He wanted the whole feeling, especially with Suzanne, to sort of just be suspended, like you would be on the ocean, because it's all about the water. So it's just, you have to have that feeling. And if the drummer was too heavy, or if we were not delicate enough, he would just, no, we can't do this. It's not working, let's just move on. And he wouldn't do it. And he wouldn't sing it on stage either. When I sing Leonard's songs, I see visuals on everything, and sometimes it's completely different than the last time I sang it. It keeps evolving, which great work does. We went to the Catholic Church, and my parents sent us to church. They didn't go. I think they used church as a babysitter. And so we would go to church. And I am not a fan of organized religion or sports, frankly. But I do believe that there's some value to people gathering for good. And those things, and I believe that that faith and religion in ways can offer people hope when they have none. My music from my childhood is from my family, not from the church. And it's very strong. My sense of music from my childhood and my father, and especially Mexican music and even German music. My mother loved, the waltzes, and in school I learned all the lieder from my teacher in high school. So. Those things are very strong in me. But yes, the Mexican music, very, very strong. With Leonard, I just knew I had to follow him. I knew. And the imagery in his songs, because, he studied religion, and the imagery, I knew those things. So I was willing to follow. And so that's a really great connection to how religion might have opened, a trust there. And I'm not a scholar, and I don't pretend to be a scholar of Leonard Cohen music. But there are elements of all of that. Just being in a Leonard Cohen concert, just singing in a Leonard Cohen concert is church to me. It's my kind of church. Because I'm always looking up. I'm always just looking for the angels in the room. And they are there in many, many ways. I knew Leonard Cohen as a man who, I think in personal relationships, did not want to deal with conflict. Not ever. I think it's a desire for harmony because, all the Zen, all that. And I remember once I said to Leonard, I lived in Mexico and I was moving to Los Angeles with my husband, and I was offered to live in a communal situation with other artists in Los Angeles, and I loved the idea. And I said, Leonard, what do you think about this idea? And he said, well, darling, I spent a lot of time in the with the monks, and if there's harmony, it's great. But if there's not, it's going to be a lot of work. And that was his only answer about how he felt about it. So his desire for harmony is very, very strong among the people that he cares about. But I felt there was a deep honesty and a desire to, sometimes chaos, which is I think what happened in Tel Aviv and the Isle of Wight. There was a lot of chaos. And we suffered a little chaos too in 1993 because I think the future was a very kind of tumultuous record. So we suffered some chaos, but not like that. There was less chaos. Leonard seemed more on the road, focused, and the work was important. We did the live, Leonard Cohen Live, and that was recorded on the road, I believe, in 1988, and then that came out. I could be mistaken, I'm not sure about the years, but, and then I did The Future. I did some arrangements, vocal arrangements on The Future, and then we, I think we recorded some other things, also live. We recorded the Leonard Cohen tribute, I'm Your Man, which wasn't with Leonard, but was with the whole cast of people. The Rufus Wainwright and the McGarrigles and those two families, and Nick Cave, who I adore, and who I think has a deep, deep love for Leonard and almost, is a conduit in ways. I think I see that for Nick. So that was a beautiful experience. I think when a person is touring, no matter how strong you are, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to be away from home. It's difficult to be away from what you know. And there are always, traveling, there are always things that happen that aren't supposed to happen. And perhaps if you're the artist, and I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm sure Leonard had levels of this, when you're a big artist like Leonard, I mean, I'm a little artist, when you're a big artist like Leonard, the problems are bigger. Sound in a stadium is terrible. So you have to deal with terrible sound in a place that wasn't designed for a concert. And Leonard cared about how things sounded. So if you're constantly disappointed, even though people love you, thousands of people clapping and they love you, you're still disappointed. The sound was bad. The lights got in my way. Oh, I couldn't hit that note. Or my piano player is drunk and has disappeared. That we had things like that happen in 1993. So yes, I think Leonard could get depressed. Anybody would. So yeah, it's a difficult way to live. On occasion, he, with all the difficulties on the road, I could see that he was just going within. And then there were times when he got angry, which I preferred the angry times, even though there were very few, very, very few. He would he would just withdraw, and that I did not like, because then you don't know how you can help the situation. The places where I could see Leonard take an interest in being there were Spain, and because of Federico García Lorca, I think, being his huge influence in poetry, but also Germany because of being a Jew, very important to him. Spanish is my first language, and Leonard loves the Spanish language. He doesn't speak the Spanish language, but he loves it. He said many times in concert, and he had me translate, that Spanish is like flowing water. It's like music, and it flows, and it's just beautiful, and that English feels like rocks in his mouth. I've had some of them translated, Leonard's songs translated into Spanish, and the interesting thing is they're already so deep in English, and then when they're translated into Spanish, they go deeper. It's quite beautiful. Dance Me to the End of Love. Deja que me acerque de la ruina del festín. Deja que me guíe este ardiente violín. Dentro de tu abrazo, al abrigo del horror. Baila conmigo, amor. Garcia Lorca wrote a poem called The Little Viennese Waltz. And Leonard, it's one of my favorite songs in the whole world. Leonard translated it so beautifully, and it's not easy to do. When you take a great poem, which is, very similar to Leonard's work, it's not easy to do when you take a great poet and then, but also Leonard's songs are already songs, but if you take a poem and you're gonna make it into a song, it has to be singable, it has to be lyrical, and that's really difficult to do. And so Leonard's translation of Take This Waltz is like the most beautiful thing I've ever read. Well, Leonard was very encouraging about my work, my songs and my writing, and so after we finished the tour in 1993, my daughter was born, and I shortly thereafter started touring my music, and so I've had a career as a solo artist since then, since 1994. My first album, solo album with my songwriting partner was about being a mestiza, being someone of mixed blood. When I was growing up, my family wanted us to assimilate. They wanted us to speak English, to help them get along in this society they didn't know very much about. And my parents both did not speak English well. And so my younger brothers were left with no Spanish. They didn't speak Spanish at all. My sister and I did, because we were always translating for everybody. And so the mestiza culture was very important to me. And I know people say mestizo, but I feminized it, because I think it's really important for women to take their place. Mestiza culture has always been of women doing a lot of work, but sitting in the back, So, so I loved this song cycle that I did. I did Mestiza, and then I did another one about Mestiza called Heaven and Earth. And I traveled and I toured a lot with that. It was very, very great for me. But what mestiza really means to me, because I didn't, in my family, there was the sexism. My father did believe that the women, my sister and I, were supposed to stay in the house till we got married. My brothers could do what they wanted, so there was that. But I never, ever thought he was right. In fact, I always knew he was very wrong. So mestiza to me only means a person of mixed blood. And we were very mixed in my family, with the Argentine blood of my mother and the German and the Jew and the Afro-Mexican of my father. We were very mixed. And my desire in this song cycle was to bring all that together in the body of a strong woman who definitely had opinions about that, and who never, I didn't come from a family of privilege. I had to protect myself, sometimes against my own family. And to leave and to be independent was my goal. as a child. And that's not very common for a Mexican-American woman. What I do know that in Leonard's relationships with women, that friendships were more back and forth equal, and but I don't, with his lovers and with other people that were closer, I think Leonard's dominance was in his work. Nothing, and no one could interfere with his work. He was totally devoted. One of Leonard's songs that I absolutely love, because it explains who he is in a very clear way, I feel, is Came So Far for Beauty. I came so far for beauty, I left so much behind, my patience and my family, my masterpiece unsigned. And then it goes on to say, which is his sense of humor, I thought I'd be rewarded for such a lonely choice, and surely she would answer to such a hopeless voice. Like, of course the women are gonna come to me. And he once said something very funny to me. He said, darling, I became a poet for the women, and I became a rock star for more women. And of course, that's just a joke. I mean, really, he was a poet and he was a songwriter, and that's what he was. He sacrificed everything for his work, and that's why we're still talking about him. And that's why we will still be talking about him for years and years, like Shakespeare. I read a sonnet of Shakespeare's the other day, and I was weeping, and I said, how long has this guy been around? And we're still weeping over his writing. That's how Leonard's gonna be. When Leonard was very sick, we had a conversation in the middle of the night on texting, and he really had a fear that his music would disappear. And I forget how he put it into words, but I said, Leonard, I'm gonna sing this music till I die. And I'm not Katie Lang, I'm not Jackson Brown, I'm not like any of these people, but what I do have that they don't have was an intimacy with Leonard and a friendship where we adored each other. And I put that across in these songs. I adored him, and I adore this work. I mean, it is a part of me. It runs through my veins. And as long as it's running through my veins, you're gonna hear me sing these songs. And no one tells me, oh, when are you gonna sing somebody else? They wouldn't dare tell me that. And I did learn one song that I really wanted to do from Leonard's last record, You Want It Darker, because something about that one song off this record just really captured for me a depth and an honesty about the moment, like you were speaking about, the moment when Leonard realizes that he's got to go, with Hanene, I'm ready, my Lord. And I remember being at his house, and he's saying, darling, what do you think about these vocals? What should we do here? And explaining to me what, Hanene means, I'm here. And so I was very excited to get to sing that song, because I kind of feel like I had, I was with him when he was in the moment of writing it, and it was very important to him. That song, of all of the songs on that particular record, it was very important to him. My band, who are all Barcelona-based musicians, we were doing just running through the song, and I didn't expect to do the choral parts at all. I was like, just sing the song. Let's just, because I had a vision of how I wanted to do it, and they were great on that vision. And then we just started to sing the choral parts together, the guys and I, and it's beautiful. I just absolutely love it. So it's going to be great, yeah. Very powerful. I never realized how green his eyes were. In that picture, anyway. There's that kitchen that I adore so much. Only that wallpaper seems very old. I think he didn't have it later. He loved his house. And that's his backyard. And see, it's a very simple house. There's nothing fancy about his house. And after he passed, a good friend of his, Hazel, and I sat right here in his backyard on this, there was a table over here, and had tea. And we were very quiet to see if we could feel Leonard. If we could feel him coming from upstairs.